Hey art nerds, today we're going to be doing another drawing demonstration, this time with two posed figures. And these figures came from SenshiStock, so if you haven't checked it out yet, I highly recommend you do so. You can find a link in the description below. So since we're drawing two figures, it's really important to establish a spatial relationship between the two, and that just means the distance between them. So we start off with two lines of action, and then I begin by sketching in the figures themselves. So I start with sort of a rectangular shape that's kind of dinted in on the left side. Those of you who are familiar with the principles of animation might be familiar with the terms squash and stretch. This is relevant even for figure drawing, especially if you're drawing for comics, because it adds an element of dynamism. It makes the figures seem more alive, seem more active, seem more dynamic. I go ahead and I sketch in the arms and legs, and then I move on to sketching in the other figure. Again, I start with sort of a rectangular shape that is curved inward. That is to imply being poked with a sword. And I also sketch in the hair. So she is falling from a jump. So her hair would be floating up, sort of following the figure. I go ahead and I roughly sketch in the arms and legs using sticks. And I use an egg for the rib cage and sort of an amorphous shape to indicate the pelvis. Now that I've got all that sketched in, I'm going to go ahead and start fleshing in the arms and legs using cylindrical shapes. I've been doing this for a few years, so I have a bit of a natural feel for it, and I like to taper the legs from the thighs to the knees, and then from the knees to the ankles. If you guys are working along with reference, you will see that that occurs naturally in most people. And you'll also notice that even though when I'm teaching you guys how to do figure drawing, I recommend you do full ellipses, I usually do half ellipses. And the reason for that is it just kind of helps me keep track of it. It keeps the shape from sort of popping out to me visually, and it helps prevent me from getting confused. For the head, I draw in a sphere, and I extend the front of the sphere into sort of a spade shape. That is the face. And then I go ahead and I use crosshairs to indicate where the eyes, nose, and mouth will be. Also sort of tighten up the hair just a little bit and begin sketching in the hand. I apologize for the drawing angle. It does occlude some of the details that I'm drawing in. So once I have one figure kind of roughly sketched in, I begin fleshing out the other one. Across the rib cage, I do a line of action, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and place the breasts. And then I draw another sphere to help indicate the head, to start fleshing out the head using the same method I showed with the other figure. And again, I draw a crosshair so I can place the ears, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the hairline. Usually I will save adding details to the face for the end. Something I really like about SenshiStock pose is that they often, or pose references, is that they often have their hair up in buns. It makes it easier for me to see the neck and shoulders. This isn't particularly common for female physical reference, for female posed reference, so it's one of the reasons I actually prefer SenshiStock. I also think they have really interesting poses like the one we're using here. Many of their poses are inspired by comics, by TV, and by manga, so if you're drawing something more action, this could be a great resource. So I go ahead and I start sketching in the hands and the sword. Now normally I would draw the sword first and then draw the hand around the sword. In this instance I sort of drew them concurrently. I drew them at the same time. Then I begin fleshing out the legs. Now normally I would recommend you draw the legs first when you start fleshing out the figure, because that's the area that's going to carry the weight of the figure, and it's going to give the figure more gravity, so it doesn't seem like it's just hanging in the air. Since I'm working from reference, I take care to note where all the curves are, where the muscle masses are, and this is so that later on, when I'm drawing from imagination, I can draw more accurately. I'm actually drawing from a mental library of images. Then I go ahead and I begin fleshing in the other arm. And in a few seconds, you'll see that I didn't like where I placed the forearm, so I just go ahead and redraw it right there. Since I draw in color pencil, I can't really erase, and yes, I know there are erasable color pencils, but I like having to redraw things. I like that I cannot spend all of my time erasing. So since this isn't a portfolio piece, I'm more concerned about what I'm going to learn, so I just go ahead and redraw it. Now that I'm this far along, I'm going to start fleshing out the face using circles to sort of figure out where the eyes, nose, and mouth will go. I apologize that my hand is covering up this view. In a future video, I'm going to do a better demonstration on drawing the face, so you guys can either wait for that or you can check out some of my existing videos for that topic. And I'm going to go ahead and draw her friend's face as well. Their expressions are, of course, slightly different since one of them is the stabber and one of them is the stabby. And I go ahead and I start adding in details on the hair. I'm keeping this kind of loose because I want to try and get this in under 10 minutes. I think my total time for both of these figures was 13 minutes, which isn't bad considering I'm drawing two people. Now I'm going to go ahead and start just marking in where the shadow is, and this is for my own mental library. I have difficulty with 3D forms mentally, so practicing gives me more material to work with, more material to draw from. So I'm just kind of loosely sketching in the shadowed areas. And part of the point of figure drawing like this is just to always keep your pencil moving. Unless you're actively thinking about how something works, always keep it moving, always keep sketching, don't slow down, don't stop too much, and that way you'll actually finish in the time allotted. And it does take practice, but I think it's a skill well worth having, and it's a skill you can start at any time. You can start today, and a year from now you'll be a much stronger artist for it. And I'm just adding in some shading on her legs. And that's just about done. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and watching me draw. I hope to see you guys again really soon. Have a great day, guys.